through glass. The nurses said the view would help him heal. Every morning, Daniel Cross sat by the window of room 412, swaddled in a blanket, watching the world go on without him. 6 weeks had passed since the crash, a moment of light, metal, and water swallowing the night. Now, time had slowed to a crawl, measured by the steady hum of machines and the faint tick of the clock above his bed. Beyond the window, autumn bled across the trees, gold, crimson, amber, the colors of fire and endings. The glass was the only thing separating Daniel from the world outside. It shimmered in daylight, flawless, perfect, unbroken. The very thing he wasn't. The first time he noticed something wrong, he was sipping cold coffee and staring through his own reflection. His reflection blinked twice. He hadn't. At first, he told himself it was nothing. The sedatives, the exhaustion, his battered mind inventing tricks. But the glass became his mirror, his confessional. Each day, he looked for signs of himself returning. Strength in his limbs, color in his face. Instead, he found something else. The reflection shifting out of rhythm, smiling when he didn't, eyes flicking toward corners of the room as if watching something he could not see. When he looked closer, the surface of the glass seemed to ripple. Beneath the thin sheen, something darker moved, as though the mirror world behind it were breathing. The glass had become more than reflection. It had become memory. "Mr. Cross," Nurse Harlow said cheerfully one morning, checking his vitals. "You're healing faster than expected." Daniel nodded absently. "The glass looks different today." She laughed. "It's just the storm light. It distorts things." But Daniel wasn't talking about distortion. He was talking about disobedience. That night, while the ward slept, he wheeled himself to the window again. Rain streaked down the glass like tears, distorting the lamplight into trembling lines. He reached out a hand to touch it. Cold, smooth. The reflection lifted its hand too, but stopped halfway. Then slowly it grinned. Then, slowly, it grinned. The next day, Daniel tried not to look, but the pull was irresistible, magnetic. The glass had become his heartbeat. Steady, endless, watching him in return. He thought of the crash, the sound of shattering glass, the windshield collapsing like fragile ice. He remembered his sister screaming beside him. Or was it his own voice? He closed his eyes, but the sound stayed. Crack, 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 like something inside him still breaking. When he looked again, his reflection was closer. No longer confined to the far side of the glass. Now it felt just behind the surface, as though one more breath would let it through. It mouthed something he could almost understand. "Let me live." Daniel called for help. Doctors came. They tested him for infection, for psychosis, for anything that could explain his growing agitation. They said trauma could project guilt, that survivors often saw what they wished they could undo. But that didn't explain the condensation on the glass, or how his reflection now seemed stronger, shoulders straighter, face unscarred. "Maybe I'm the one behind the glass," Daniel whispered to the empty room. The storm arrived 3 nights later. The building shuddered under wind and rain. Lights flickered, monitors beeped and steadied again. Daniel sat awake, eyes fixed on the window. The glass pulsed with the reflection of lightning, his own face illuminated in fragments. But the reflection wasn't still anymore. It was moving, pacing the mirrored room behind him. It stopped, pressed its hand to the surface, and whispered through the storm. "It's my turn." Daniel's breath fogged the pain. He whispered back, "Who are you?" The reflection's mouth curved into a perfect familiar smile. The one who didn't survive. The window shattered. Alarms blared. Nurses rushed in to find Daniel convulsing, glass embedded in his palms. When they tried to restrain him, he screamed that he was still inside, that he couldn't get out. They sedated him. When he woke, the window was replaced, flawless again. But something was wrong. His body felt lighter, his hands unscarred. He turned toward the glass. A man lay in the hospital bed, pale, breathing shallowly, tubes running into his arms. Daniel touched the window, heart pounding. The reflection stared back, eyes wide, mouth open in silent horror. He smiled. Outside, the storm cleared. The nurses said room 412 was finally quiet, but every night, when the corridor lights dimmed and the air grew still, a faint shape appeared in the window. A hand pressed against the glass, fogging with each desperate breath. And from the other side, a voice whispered faintly, as if trapped behind a thin, unbreakable wall of memory. "Let me out.